Welcome to This Embodied Voice. My name is Suzanne Leese, and today I'm speaking with soprano Maya Kherani. That's her singing Purcell's Music for a While at the Valley of the Moon Music Festival last year. I spoke to her in the last month of her pregnancy about what it's like to be pregnant during a pandemic, her experiences with vocal injury and reflux, and what it means to be South Asian and working in the field of Western classical music today. All right, so welcome to the podcast, Maya.
Thanks for having me.
So I thought we would start with a very obvious question of how you're feeling since you're pregnant, and tell us when you're due.
Yeah, I'm due March 31st, so it's coming up pretty quickly, which I'm very excited about because I'm having a baby girl, so I want her out because it's been a bit of a rough pregnancy. I've been singing through it, but it's just a lot of discomfort and pain, especially when I practice a lot right now. So it's a little bit of an annoyance, but baby's doing well, and we're excited for her arrival, which is imminent.
I should say that we're recording this in mid-February, so you have about 6 more weeks to go. This is truly the final stretch, it seems.
Yeah, exactly.
So you said there's been some discomfort and some pain. Were there things that you were expecting, or the things you were not expecting?
I'd say both. My first trimester was pretty difficult. I was just very, very nauseous, and just sort of found it difficult to, my energy was really, really low, and I was pretty much nauseous the entire day. They say morning sickness, but it's all day. And my mom had really bad nausea with both me and my brother, so I was kind of expecting that. And that led up around 13 or 14 weeks, thank goodness. And I recorded an opera production right about 15, 16 weeks. So it was like this sweet spot in my pregnancy, which was great because I actually felt okay. And then I'd say the last trimester has been hard. So, I'm in the last 6 weeks now. And the previous about a month and a half has been difficult because I have a very short torso. I'm just really short-waisted. And there's just not enough room in there for her. So breathing has become more difficult, especially with singing. I'm getting very good at my back breathing, which I suppose is good for my technique anyway. But yeah, it's just been a lot of pain, around the ribs. And I have actually a nerve pinch, or not pinch, but compression of the nerves sort of right under my ribs and near my sternum. And there's not a lot I can do about that because it's a nerve pain. So there's nothing that I can take that will get rid of it. I've continued my yoga practice, which I've shifted to a prenatal practice now, which helps. And I take a lot of Epsom salt baths, which also help. But, I think the only thing that's really going to bring me relief is for her to be out. So, yeah, it's been really challenging. And it's interesting because I feel like there's not a lot of dialogue about the sacrifices on a woman's body during pregnancy. The stereotypical thing is that people post the news and it's great, it's wonderful, and people say oh, you're glowing, or oh, you look so beautiful, or blah blah blah, and it's a little enraging because it's no, I'm not glowing, I'm definitely exhausted beyond belief, and I have 8 different pains that are happening right now, and I get the motivation, and I think it's really sweet of people to be supportive and encouraging, but it's also sometimes I feel sort of diminishes the sacrifice that women go through, especially those of us who use our bodies as our jobs, being a singer as an athlete. So there's a lot of a lot of sacrifice. But of course, I mean, that's all to say that I'm super excited about having the baby, and my husband and I are thrilled, and we're really looking forward to it. So I'm very happy that we're having the baby, but it's been a lot of sacrifice.
So obviously support is like really important for a woman during her pregnancy, whether it be family or a partner or healthcare resources. And I was wondering, how, if at all, have you felt supported by arts institutions during your pregnancy?
I am super lucky and extremely grateful right now to be supported by Opera San Jose, who I'm employed by right now as a resident artist. Um, First of all, being employed like during a pandemic, I am so thankful for that, and I know it's a huge privilege uh, to be in this position. And they've been really great about the pregnancy. So I've I started my contract started in August, and my pregnancy started in July. So I've been pregnant for the whole contract. But they've been really receptive to what I need and what I feel comfortable doing, both in terms of safety with COVID protocols. For example, like whenever there's a rehearsal or a string of coachings in the rehearsal room, we all get tested every week, and we also isolate, and there's a set of protocols that we have to adhere to. But in addition to that, I'm always the first one in the room, so I'm never having to sing after somebody else just because I'm the pregnant one. So that's something that they wanted to make sure that I was comfortable with, which is, they don't have to do that, which I really appreciate. Also, my contract is still going on, and I'm involved with the company, but I'm taking time off for when the baby comes, and my contract is still going on. Like, I'm taking some unpaid time, but it's they've just been so supportive about when I want to come back, to singing, doing the concerts and engagements that I can do when I feel comfortable, when I feel recovered. So that's huge. I don't really know of many opera companies that would do that. And I have to say that it's a woman-led organization, and I think they've been really, really supportive of the pregnancy, and of me taking care of myself. And as I like to work, I like to sing, so they're letting me take the lead, and I've still been singing, I've still been recording, so it's been really, really nice to have that, and to be occupied during the pregnancy as well. And I feel like my voice feels great. Like, I've been singing the same repertoire. I haven't really changed any of the repertoire that I've been singing. I kind of liken it to training for a marathon in altitude because I still sing a lot of, my repertoire has a lot of coloratura in it, not high coloratura, but like fast moving notes. And so, certain Handel arias or Mozart arias that have huge long coloratura passages, like I'm training that right now while being pregnant and having like half of my lung capacity. But I feel like once I deliver, everything's gonna feel easy. So
Yeah, you're gonna have a little thin stream of air. It's all you need.
Yes,
It's great.
exactly. No, so it's like making me a better singer, having to sing through the pregnancy as well. The only thing is that sometimes when I'm singing for a long period of time and I'm using so much lower body expansion, I don't think the little one in there is very comfortable, and so she starts kicking a lot. And sometimes
Really?
sometimes that makes my like rib area kind of sore because her legs are like right up here. And so I remember
amazing.
I was coaching Marina Zaria last week, and right before the high note, right before the high C, I just get a big whack. And I had to stop in the middle of the coaching and be like, okay, I got to catch my breath. So it's pretty funny, and it's pretty like unique experience.
Yeah, that's so surreal.
Isn't that crazy? It's just
Yeah.
crazy. I wonder what it sounds like in there. But I've been singing throughout the entire pregnancy, and so I asked my OB. I said, do I need to be careful? Like after I deliver, do I need to like not sing around her? Like, is she going to be startled? And my OB said, you've been singing around her the whole pregnancy. She's probably used to it. She's probably going to be lulled by it, you know? So it's just a crazy thing to think about that she's like experiencing the voice in such a different way. And it's funny because like I know 8 sopranos right now that are pregnant or have recently given birth in the last like 8 weeks. And it's crazy because it's kind of like it takes a pandemic, you know, to feel like, oh, I can take this time for myself. I can take time now to be pregnant and not. So it's a little bit messed up if you think about it, because I know in my mind I was thinking like I'm not traveling now. I was supposed to be in Amsterdam all year, and that dried up. So I was like, well, I guess I'm not traveling. So like perfect timing. We were wanting to have kids anyway, but it's a little messed up that like it takes a global pandemic for us female singers to think, okay, I can now take this time to have a child. You know?
So what has it been like though being pregnant during a pandemic? Because I could, on the one hand, I could see it being kind of nice, like, oh, just kind of cuddle at home with the husband and enjoy this special time, prepare the house, whatever. But I could also see it potentially being isolating.
Yeah, I think it's both. I'm thankful to not be traveling so much and to have a lighter schedule. But in some ways, maybe that distraction would have been nice because, all we're just at home all the time. So it's like, it's just constantly all I'm doing is being pregnant. Um, so yeah, I think it's both. Um, and we have definitely used the time to like nest and set up the nursery and all that stuff, which is really lovely and a privilege. But I can't. I'm alone at every doctor's appointment I've been to. My husband can't even come. Um, my parents, hopefully they'll get vaccinated before they would really, when they want to come see the baby when in a couple of months after her birth. Uh, Hopefully they'll be able to come, but we're not sure yet. So it is isolating, and it's a strange time to be pregnant. And we're thinking about like, okay, how long do we need to be at the hospital? Can I get vaccinated before? What are the risks? I've been super careful with isolating because it is more dangerous for a pregnant woman to get COVID. So that's been a source of anxiety too. So I think it's both things. It's been in some ways a lot harder, um, but then in other ways, I am able to rest more and I'm able to do more self care, as it were, um, because there's really nowhere else to go.
I know that you're in kind of a specific situation now with your pregnancy, but I was wondering if you could maybe like sum up your vocal technique journey, or like what are something that's always been hard for you?
Yeah. I went through a pretty significant change in my approach to vocal technique last year. Yeah, about a year and a half ago, when I started with a new teacher. Um, and I know we've chatted about this before in our like personal lives, but I had been having some vocal problems, um, in that I was suffering from really severe reflux. I would sing a rehearsal and then the next day not have a voice. It was so unpredictable. Um, and also that just made me so anxious mentally because I just didn't know what was going to come out of my mouth the next day, if I was going to have the notes, or if I was going to be able to sing that audition. And it was so stressful, and that probably made the reflux worse. So it was like this positive feedback loop where just kind of everything just sort of fed into each other. And I really struggled with that for years. I was put on a bunch of drugs from, an ENT who diagnosed me with reflux years ago, and uh, I tried all these. I tried the PPIs, I tried the H2 blockers, all that stuff, and it never got better. And I really think it made me worse in a lot of ways. And so I finally decided that like just wasn't sustainable, and I just didn't know what was going on. And I switched teachers, um, and we really kind of got to the root cause of the reflux, which was that I was really over pressurizing my voice, um, and using a support technique that was not helpful for me. My lower body was really rigid, and I would compress the air, especially on set. And I'd make a pretty sound, like I was still getting work. I was still sounding like myself, but it was just, I wasn't using very efficient vocal technique. And so I was sort of overblowing the voice, and at the same time, in order to not have my chords sort of blow out, I'd have to compress my chords so that they would regulate the air pressure that way. And then that just caused fatigue at my vocal cords, and it made my reflux a lot worse because I was constantly compressing my lower body. And so for about 8 months with this teacher, I worked through really realigning my support, and thinking much more about the outward leaning appoggio. And I gotta say, within a year, my reflux disappeared. Um, I am off like all of the drugs. I haven't, I eat a healthful diet because it makes me feel good, but now I don't have to be worried about certain trigger foods. And if I'm traveling for an audition, like, oh, I gotta find somewhere where I can get food that doesn't have X, Y, and Z ingredients in it, because who knows, that might trigger an episode and I won't be able to sing my audition tomorrow. So I don't have to worry about that anymore. I don't really have to warm up very much anymore. So that's a combination of singing the right repertoire now that fits my voice, and really realigning my support so that I'm not overpressurizing the voice. And I realized that the overpressurization of the airflow also caused my tongue to really retract, to sort of try and control that airflow, right? Because if there's too much air flowing through, then I sort of use my tongue as a cork to try to control it, right? And then that just tightened everything up in my throat as well. So it's just problems layered upon problems, right? I think a lot of times we get ourselves into like these compensatory behaviors where, something's a little off, and then we do something else to fix it, and we do something else to fix it, and you get the layers of inefficiencies, So I kind of had to break everything down, and start from the ground up again. And I feel like my voice is much more aligned and free now, and because of that, I think that like my true voice is out now. I feel like this is the color of my voice. This is the weight of my voice. Like this is what my real voice sounds like without these manipulations. And so now finding the repertoire that fits my true voice feels really, really good, and it feels like I can sing for a long time. So it's been a journey, and so this has been like the last 2 years I've been working on this, and I feel like in a really good place right now. I have to say that going through that struggle has made me appreciate the work so much more, and has made me a better singer, no doubt. There are plenty of natural singers who just like everything lines up and it's great and they can just go. But I've really had to work, and I know that I'm sure that you feel the same way. But like I've really had to work at it. It wasn't something that was natural to me, but because of that, I feel really secure and like confident in my technique. So if I need to travel and sing, or if I'm a little sick and I need to sing, or I've got a huge number of back-to-back rehearsal days, I know that I can trust my technique enough now to have the confidence to say, okay, yeah, I can do that, or no, that's too much for me, because I'm so like clued into what my voice can do and what it wants to do. My teacher says that technique is not for the audience, it's for the singer, and I truly believe that. Like your audience is not going to know if you have perfect technique. And in fact, I do sound different than I did before, but I still sound like myself. But the big difference is that the technique that I have now serves me as a singer. It helps me to trust my voice, helps me to sing for longer, sing for more days in a row, that kind of thing.
Well, and I really appreciate that you were so like open about your issues with the reflux and your like vocal issues a few years ago, because I also, like, before that I'd had some vocal issues. I did have problems with reflux, and I was actually inspired by you to like really figure them out and deal with them, because it also sort of felt like it had come to a head. It was like, I don't really know if I can keep going this way. How was it for you to kind of be so open about those issues on social media, when I feel like a lot of people don't talk about like vocal injury or kind of very unglamorous things like reflux?
That makes me so happy that at least I feel like me opening up like helped you on your journey as well. It's crazy to me that vocal injury is so stigmatized because every athlete probably ever has gone through some sort of injury in their lives, in their careers. Like, we use our voices in a really athletic way. It makes sense that injuries are going to happen. Um, and I think by stigmatizing them, we don't do anyone any favors, especially young singers. Um, so I just felt like, you know what, if someone's not going to hire me because of this journey that I went through, then whatever. Like, I don't want to work with them anyway. I truly feel, as I said before, like going through the struggle, going through the journey, going through the healing process has made me a better singer and a better interpreter. So if they don't see that, like, that's not my problem, I guess. um, you know, and there's so much mystery and mysticism sort of surrounding vocalism and singing that I didn't find very helpful to me because, it's a set of muscles that work in concert, and it's a lot of, anatomy and how you sort of balance muscle activation really in a most efficient way. So talking about the voice is like, oh, it's like this disembodied thing, it's this gift that you can't control, and that just felt very disempowering to me. um, so reframing it as, okay, these are the set of muscles that I need to train and work in a way that's most efficient, rather than, oh, my voice is broken or I'm broken because I can no longer sing. And I think a lot of singers tie their identities to their voices. And I'm guilty of this too, right? Because it's so personal. It's part of our bodies. But I think being open about my vocal struggles and injuries or injury has helped me to cope with it, sort of being able to put that struggle outside of my identity so that I can address the issue and I can heal without thinking that I'm broken or that I can no longer be a singer, or, my my self-worth is somehow diminished. Um, so that's been helpful for me, and I'm glad it's been helpful for other people as well.
Would you be okay with like talking a little bit more about your vocal injury?
Sure, yeah. So it was a reflux related vocal injury. Um, and I, it manifested, I just had such bad heartburn. So I had like all those stereotypical heartburn symptoms, and I had a lot of LPR symptoms, which were laryngopharyngeal reflux. I don't know, silent reflux, something like that. Where I'd have morning hoarseness and throat clearing and stuff like that. And when I got scoped, uh, they found a very small, like, pre-nodule on one of my cords. And it was really, really, really scary. And this was a while ago now. And it felt like I couldn't do anything about it. And I was recommended to do voice therapy, and I did that, and I did speech therapy and all of that. But the root of the problem was still there, which was the fact that I was really over fatiguing my cords on like a daily basis. And I didn't know that I was. And on top of that, like, the technique was creating an environment for reflux because I was just sort of pushing on everything so hard that I was really feeling the heartburn, and then on top of that I'd have to really push on my cords to make the sound that I wanted, and it was this vicious cycle. So when I got scoped and the ENT found that like pre-nodule, I thought, oh my gosh, like I've got to do something about this. And I even considered like not singing anymore because I just couldn't handle the anxiety. It just wasn't fun anymore because I just felt like my voice was no longer in my control, and I couldn't depend on my instrument. And I had a really sort of traumatic experience when I was a young artist at Central City over the summer, and I was chosen as one of the few young artists to do a recital. And like the night before the recital, I had my big dress rehearsal, and so and plus we were really worked hard as young artists. I was in like 5 productions at once, and it was 6 days a week. But the night before my recital, um, I had a big dress rehearsal. I sang through all my repertoire. I felt great. I woke up the morning of my recital and was hoarse, like just couldn't sing at all. And that was the first time that I felt like, why am I doing this? Why is this my career? Like, this is so stressful. Um, I just felt like there was so much pressure. This was a while ago, so I wasn't really as like secure in my abilities and my identity. I felt like there was a lot of pressure, and I thought, okay, maybe I should just like give up singing because I can't predict what's going to happen with my voice. So that was a big wake up call for me. I ended up making it through that recital, and it was fine. But I then had to like rest for days after that. It was not ideal, not fun for me to sing, probably not fun for the audience because I was so stressed. Um, but I think going through that injury though, like was really difficult mentally. Um, and now like I'm totally healed now. Like my chords look great and they're fine, which is also heartening because you can heal from these things. So if you are struggling with an injury, you can you're not like permanently broken. Like there are a lot of most of the time like you can recover, you can heal. There is treatment that works. So that's just to like give hope to anyone who is listening. Um, but it was scary, and I think that especially because nobody talks about it, nobody brings it up. I really felt like I was alone. Um, and my teacher tried to help me, but it feels very out of your hands. And I remember thinking, how are these singers with these huge careers, like, how are they traveling every day and singing new concerts, singing these huge roles? Like, how is that even possible? I just didn't understand, like, how that could work at all. Because my experience was like, I could only do these certain things, and I had to have all these rest days, and I had to be so careful with what I ate, and I had to be, all this stuff. And I didn't really realize that, you know, it was my technique that was really holding me back. And I know that people don't, I'm not going to try to technique shame anyone. Like everyone has their own journey.
No, and I so appreciate that because it's like important to me with this podcast that it's not about technique shaming or, there's
Yeah,
so many reasons you could have a vocal injury.
exactly. In my particular case, it happened to stem from my technique, but agreed. There's so many reasons you can have an injury. And I think not talking about it is not a way to help anyone, right? Um, but that was my journey. Because it was related to my technique, honestly, it was a little bit harder to wrap my head around because I felt like I had a lot of feedback from people saying that, oh, you sing so well and, your voice is lined up. And there was a lot of conflicting information I was getting. So I thought, oh, it can't be my technique, and I was in a little bit of a denial about it, me personally. So, um, because technique also feels super personal, you know, it feels like if your technique is criticized, then it hurts. Of course, it hurts, right? Like it hurts personally. So it took me a while to come to terms with like, okay, you know what? I can be more efficient with my technique, and therefore like help this help to heal this injury that I've suffered. And just I wanted to move forward and progress. And it took a while. It took like a year of really diligent work, and I'm thankful that it worked for me. I know that it maybe not would not work for everyone, but it worked for me, and I'm really really thankful for that because I had the right teacher and I was doing the right work. Um, but it was hard mentally, you know.
Yeah. It seems like you're also quite you're a doer. Like you get things done, and you've used this word several times. Like it took a year of really hard work, really diligent practicing, and I was wondering if you could talk about like how you practice.
Sure. Yes, I definitely err on the side of doing too much rather than doing too little. Probably because I'm a control freak, and I think a lot of us singers are, especially sopranos. Um, but I was just very regimented in my practice, so it doesn't work for everyone. But like, I literally have a spreadsheet, of like the different like technical goals I have, but I'm like, here are my, thin edge exercises. Here's my bucket of tongue exercises. Here's, if I want to work on my messa de voce or my coloratura or yeah. So like I have like bucketed exercises into these categories that I want to work on. And I pick a few every day or a one or two, or maybe if I'm singing certain repertoire, then I'll pick something that uh, applies to that. Um, my phone anyway. So I'm pretty regimented that way, which I know would not work for everyone.
So that's just so that you can see like how often you've been doing some particular exercises. You're not falling into a rut of doing always the same one.
Or falling into the rut of just like singing my repertoire, like just doing a few lip trills and feeling like, oh, I'm warmed up, and then just singing through all my arias.
Yeah, it's like that meme of the guy like stepping over all the stairs. I don't know if you've seen that one where it's like goes over, scales, lip trills, thin edge stuff, that just goes straight to like practice my high B flat or whatever.
Like practice my high B flat like 20 times in a row.
Yeah.
And it kind of keeps like long-term goals in my view. So for a long time, like my lower passaggio, just wasn't feeling comfortable and would be very like unreliable. And so I had this like whole series of exercises that I was doing to sort of target that. And it's not fun. It's not fun practicing in my lower passaggio, but there's so much of my repertoire that requires me to be comfortable and confident there. So it was just a reminder to be like, remember, this is a goal area for you, and it's going to take you 6 or 12 months to get where you want to go, but it kind of takes that daily or, a few times a week practice in that area that is not like, it's not fun. Everyone wants to practice their high notes and practice the fun, flashy stuff, right? I mean, I certainly do. So it just kind of kept me accountable.
About the yoga practice. So I'm a yoga teacher here in Berlin, and to be clear, I teach like I teach asana, right? I teach like the physical pose aspect of yoga. For those of you who don't know, anyone listening, yoga is actually this like 8-limbed philosophy, and there's breath work, but there's also just general approaches to life. So I know, and I've been thinking for past years a lot about like what it means to be a white person teaching this ancient Indian kind of system of life. And I was wondering in what context you first started practicing yoga. Was it something growing up in your family that was done, or did you experience it later in like more of a Western package?
Oh, interesting question. So my uncle in India, I still have a lot of family in India. My uncle has been like a practicing yogi for decades, like really hardcore, very traditional yoga practice. And so that was my first exposure to it. And he's been practicing for maybe 50 years or so. And then my first exposure to doing my own practice was in high school. I grew up Hindu. My family is Hindu. And we had like a Sunday school thing with our local Hindu society. I grew up in Texas. And as part of our Sunday school, we did yoga. So, as in Sanskrit, with the Sanskrit, and we had one of our teachers was, one of the moms, but she was also like a yoga teacher. But it was much more of the philosophical strain of yoga. We did a lot of talking about the mental side of things, the breath work, and then we'd also do the asana yoga as well. So that was my first exposure to it. And then, I'm no longer religious, but I did really enjoy the physical aspect of it and the mindfulness aspect of it. So then I started taking like yoga classes in a much more Western setting, like the local yoga studio or doing videos online. And my husband and I did it together, and we would just watch like the yoga DVDs at the time. I don't even think there was YouTube. It wasn't like there was a YouTube. It was YouTube existed, but it wasn't like now you can find all yoga. Yeah. And so it became like the more westernized practice, and that's kind of what I've stuck to now. Although the foundations for me were more in the philosophical and the more Vedic text connection, having to do with identifying as Hindu then. But it's interesting. I think some people think it's appropriation, but I don't. I think personally, I think that yoga is universal and it has universal benefit. And if more people are interested in learning about it and practicing it, like to me, that's the point. It's not meant to be this exclusive practice that only applies to, people of the subcontinent. So I welcome it. I know some people feel differently, but I think it's meant to be an open practice.
Yeah. I also read online that you studied I'm not saying this right, maybe Carnatic music?
Yeah, so that's Indian classical music.
Yeah.
I did when I was a kid for a few years. And I also studied Indian classical dance, which is Bharatanatyam, which has a lot of like theatrical aspects to it.
Yeah.
And that did influence me as a child, like appreciating the arts. The Carnatic music is such a different vocal style. I am no expert because I have not studied Carnatic music in a very long time. I was a child. I did it for a few years, and I was also taking voice lessons at the same time, like Western voice lessons. So I can only speak to my limited experience. But to me, so it's not, the Carnatic style of singing is improvisatory. It's an oral tradition, like meaning that it's not really written in any way. And it's based on a series of ragas, which is what we call like basically modes, so like you have different scales, and so a lot of the training is mastering the scales and being able to improvise on any composition. And the vocal production is like a higher larynx position, and it's not using as much like resonant space of the head, so you get that slightly different timbre. It can sound a little nasal, or it can sound it's a different like acoustical effect, and it's generally you perform with a mic, so it's not something that you could do really without amplification unless you're in a small space. So it was so technically different for me, and I was doing both things at once that like my little brain couldn't handle it. So I liked singing Western music better, and so I picked that. But it's really cool. I'm actually doing a piece right now that I'm recording with the Berkeley Symphony in a couple of weeks, that is written by Rina Ismail, who's an up-and-coming composer in LA. She's like Rina blowing Ismail. Up.
Yeah, she's
amazing.
So hot right now, as they say.
She's so hot right now. I know she's like a wonderful person too. She's really sweet. And the piece is written for, the version we're doing is a quintet, and piano and Carnatic vocal, Hindustani vocalist. Carnatic and Hindustani are very similar. Carnatic music is South Indian classical, and Hindustani is North Indian. They're very similar though in terms of technique and style. So it's written for a Hindustani vocalist and a soprano, a Western, operatic soprano. So I'm singing the soprano role, and I'm working with Siley Oak, who's a
Uh,
Hindustani vocalist
I've
extraordinaire.
I've worked with Siley in a similar sort of
Have
piece,
you?
and well, first of all, she's like the nicest person, but she's also
Yeah.
like when she opens her mouth, it's just like the most amazing timbre of her sound that
It's
comes out. I
gorgeous.
don't. Oh, she's great.
Yeah. And maybe you know the piece. It's My Sister's Keeper. I think they did it at Songfest a few years ago. It's such a cool piece, and it really does combine there's like an overlay of the
Yeah.
two styles, and it works exceptionally well. Um and there's like parts, there's one movement where we sort of switch back and forth singing the same note, and she does her improvisatory thing on it, and then I have written in the soprano part, like the actual I don't have to improvise, thank goodness, but it's like, the ornamentation is written in, but I do it in my style of singing, Western style of singing, and it's just so cool to hear like the same notes, the same figures, but in the two different vocal techniques juxtaposed like that. It's fascinating. It's such a cool thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How like connected do you still feel to India? Like you have in your bio Indian American soprano.
I mean, I'm pretty connected to it. Like I still have family there. My dad's side of the family still lives there. I haven't been back in a few years. Um, but yeah, culturally, that's what I grew up. My parents are immigrants, both from South India. My husband is Indian, but his family is Muslim, and they immigrated via East Africa through Canada. So we've slightly different background, but still both identify with like South Asian culture and tradition. Um, and yeah, I speak Tamil, which is a South Indian language, uh, poorly. I speak it poorly. I can understand it. Um, but I mean, I think that really has influenced my, like, it's still a big part of my identity. So I have been involved in a lot of projects that sort of combine East and West, or bringing projects that may not feel like they apply to those communities, but in a way that is more accessible. So, for a lot of people, like just seeing like an Indian American singing something, they think, oh, like, oh, I didn't think I would relate to this, but like I relate. The 3 Decembers that I did was cool because we were all three different, the three characters in the opera, but we were all three different ethnicities. So Susan Graham singing Maddie, which is amazing. She's incredible. And then Efrain Solis was our baritone, who was Mexican American. And we're a family, which I think is so cool because I think it takes like out of the box thinking. And a lot of people who saw the show thought that we really came across as a family, and it didn't matter that we looked totally different from each other or had different backgrounds. And so in that way, I think singing and music and opera can really be universal. So that's like part of my artistic mission, is to bring opera to non-Western audiences. And so that's part of the reason that I sort of lean into that identity, like in my bio and stuff like that, because that's what I feel like I can do, to serve the audience in a way.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I thought I would mention also that you also have started a little like online community called South Asians in Western Classical Music.
Yeah, this was we just started this a couple of weeks ago. It's a friend of mine, Vijay Chalasani, and he's a Baroque violist and faculty at Colorado State University, or I can't remember where in Colorado. And we went to San Francisco Conservatory together, and we were like the only two brown people there. But we were chatting, and he was wondering, we were chatting about how few other South Asians we know in Western classical music. And so we decided to start this Facebook group, and we thought like maybe 10 or 20 of our friends would join, and that would be it. We're like at 225 members over this has only started 2 weeks ago. And we've just been, the outpouring of support has been huge, and people, joining the group is and saying things like, I never knew there were so many people. I thought, like, there was a conductor who put a post up who said, I didn't know that there were other South Asian conductors, and I thought this career wasn't for me, but like seeing the number of people in this group and the people who are actually making careers and doing this professionally, like, that is so inspiring. And like, that's the reason we started the group, because it can feel very isolating. Yeah. And so it's blown us away with how much support and activity it's gotten. And I hope it inspires people to bring their own voice to, classical music, which can be very monolithic. Yeah.
All right, my dear, I think that's all on my end. Thank you so, so much for doing this and taking the time.
Absolutely. This is so much fun.
And thank you for also just being such a great example of like the diversity, the being open about your vocal injuries, your reflux struggles, your pregnancy struggles, all of it. I love your way of being, and I just wish there were more people like you. So.
Oh, thank you. Well, I hope that I can help somebody else not have to struggle the way that I did, or at least know that your struggle is like, worth it, and will, for me anyway, has made me a better artist, a more whole artist. So, yeah, there's nothing wrong with struggle.
Mm-hmm. And I think the cool thing also is that like the voice and the body, they're so different from like day to day, hour to hour. Like we could do this interview in a year and it'll be totally different. So
exactly.
If you're down, we can meet up again in a year and chat. Maybe in person, who knows?
Yeah. Oh, that would be amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I wish you the best
to talk to
in
you.
the rest of your pregnancy also.
Thank you.
Right. Take care.
Okay. Bye.
Bye-bye. And I'm really happy to report that since our interview, Maya gave birth to a beautiful little baby girl, and we are wishing both of them the very best. And thank you to you for listening to this very first episode of This Embodied Voice. So this is a podcast where we talk about the voice, the body, and everything between. And if you enjoyed the episode, then please rate, review, subscribe, and tell a friend. You can also reach me, Suzanne, on Instagram at This Embodied Voice. Until next time, take care of your body, take care of your voice, and be well.